Hello, and welcome to Grim and Whim, unnerving tales to haunt, mystify, and spark curiosity. Let's be
Curious together.
On today's episode, we are going to be looking at some pretty intense and insane stories about people working the late shift or the night shift. And I personally have never worked a night shift. I did used to work in bars and I did work in restaurants pretty late at night, but it was never an overnight situation. And honestly, when I think of the night shift, my mind always goes to like taking out the trash at night. We're like SpongeBob and Squidward and the hash slinging slasher. Yeah, that's where my mind goes. But with that, let's get into these crazy night shift stories.
Night, 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 night.
This is probably the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me. I used to work overnight as a security guard at the local port. Usually, none of the port workers would stay overnight except for the safety official. I wouldn't be on the night shift alone since the site has a radius of nearly 2 miles. Overnight, usually there would be 3 guards, including me. Since the area was fairly big, there were different posts, but front gate was the main entrance area where all of the guards would be stationed overnight, since there was no need to put them in any other post due to the fact that there was no activity in the site at this time. The veteran guards that have been there for years would often say that the site was haunted, given the fact that there have been accidents and deaths that occurred in the area a long time ago. I was aware that people died there due to freak accidents, and I do believe in angels and demons since I'm actually a religious person. But I always thought that the superiors were just messing with the new guys. I would work 5 to 6 nights out of the week, and for the first few weeks, I never really saw or heard anything out of the ordinary, except for maybe a few questionable creaks and a few misplaced objects while I was doing my patrol rounds. But nothing too crazy. Just to describe the setting to you, this is a fairly big site, and on occasions when there were big projects being constructed at the port, the workers would sometimes stay overnight, due to the fact that there were times where workers were required to stay at the port for a few days. There's a gym in the site for their convenience. This gym is fairly old, and in the gym there's a sauna, weights, and even a racquetball court. If you don't know what a racquetball court is, it is similar to an indoor tennis court with thin, plastered walls and thick glass doors. Usually on our patrol rounds, me and one of the other guards, Mike, would stop by the gym and play a few rounds of racquetball before returning back to the front gate. On one of those nights, me and Mike decided to hit a full workout instead of playing racquetball in the cage. This is around 2:30 a.m. and the entire building is so quiet that you can hear the electricity running through the lights. The air conditioner is off, and so is everything else. The only thing that's running are the lights. 15 to 20 minutes into the workout, we hear a loud thump. We crossed it off as nothing and continued to work out. Then after a few more minutes, we heard the loud thump once more. At first, we thought it was our lieutenant, which could have been walking around, but then we radioed him, and he gave us his location, which was front gate. We tried thinking logically on what could be making those thumps on the wall. They were coming from the court on the other side. We thought it was the air conditioner, but then we remembered that it was off. And even when it's switched on during the day, there's no reports of thumps coming from the air conditioner. After a few more minutes, the thumps began occurring, one right after another. We were very creeped out at this point, but what we were about to witness still scares the absolute shit out of me till this very day. We started to approach the other side of the gym to where the glass door was. We turned on the flashlight and aimed it towards the clear glass door, and I got chills all over my body, and I started tearing so much out of fear that I was about to cry. We saw one of the balls rolling slowly by itself inside the court, but there was no one in there. So that means the loud thumps were the balls mysteriously being tossed against the wall as if someone or something was playing inside the cage. We were both so confused and frightened to how this was actually happening. We couldn't make any sense of it. We were scared shitless, and we started yelling and running away because we knew that there was probably something evil toying with us right there. As we sprinted full speed back to the front gate, the lieutenant saw us and asked why we were tearing up and running in such a ridiculous manner. We told him what we had witnessed, and his facial expressions scared us even more. He then said, "That's why there's always guards that quit often. There's something evil in this area, and it's not the first time that something that bad has happened here." He then showed us security footage of dark figures and shadows literally passing through the office areas, and lights mysteriously switching on and off. Till this day, I still get chills recounting my experience with my friends and my family, and I'm even getting chills right now as I'm typing this. I had never had a real encounter with the supernatural until that night. Many say that it was a demonic presence messing around with us, while others say it was a ghost of a dead person who died in the area. I don't know what it was, but I didn't last long in the job after that. This next story is on the shorter end, but I found it to be really interesting, so. I work at a sleep lab that unfortunately has some paranormal activity. I've had several patients in one particular room complaining of a woman screaming for help, even though every patient is asleep. We see strange stuff, such as everyone in the building waking up at the exact same time, and bright flashes on the cameras, as well as an occasional growl. I definitely don't feel comfortable working by myself here, and luckily, I have a coworker. Otherwise, I'd be out of here. I was the navigation officer for a research ship in the South Pacific. We had recently come to Papua New Guinea for some work along the coast. We had arrived in a small bay at around 10 p.m. in the dark of night and dropped the anchor. I went over to mark our position on the chart and noticed an annotation that said, "Native village reported in the area." There were no fires or lights on the coast, so I didn't think anything much more of it. I turned on all the deck and underwater lights and went back into the bridge to stand my night watch as everyone else went to bed. Even with all the lights on, I couldn't see further than about 25 yards because of a light mist in the pitch black night. I sat on the bridge with the door open in the pitch black night because I like the sound of the night and the feeling of the air in the tropics. I kept hearing lights splashing in the water and went out to sea because often we get hundreds of fish in our underwater lights. There was nothing there though. I went back inside but kept hearing faint splashing, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Since I couldn't see out into the distance, I went into the chart room and flicked on our infrared camera system, and there they all were. About 50 native outrigger canoes just sitting outside our pool of light. About 3 people to a canoe were all just sitting and watching us. occasionally paddling one way or the other to keep their station. I have never felt so suddenly and violently alone and small as I did on that ship in the dark. I got a deckhand up and we both just walked around the deck to show that people were awake and moving. They sat there and watched us all night, completely invisible, except for on the infrared camera. In the morning, they came in and traded with us and were very friendly, but they just hadn't had a ship in their bay for decades. I worked at a movie theater, and most often I worked the closing shift. One night, me and another manager were sitting in the small office. She was working on the nightly deposit, and I was finishing up inventory numbers. We had a CD player that we would listen to at night with a stack of CDs sitting next to it. I stood up and changed the CD and sat back down. About a minute after, the entire stack of CDs launched itself around the room. One of the CDs hit my coworker in the back of the head. She looked around and saw me sitting there dumbfounded with the CDs scattered all around me and the office. We quickly finished up and then left. A couple of days later, one of the day shift managers calls me and asks me what we were doing the other night. She seemed really annoyed with me, which was out of character for her because we were friends. I asked her what she meant, and she asked me why we had dumped all of the security tapes onto the floor and left them there. I told her we hadn't touched the security tapes at all. The tapes were stored on the top of the CCTV monitor on a small VHS tape shelf. The shelf hadn't been moved, and only the tapes were on the floor. She also said that all of the sleeves from the tapes had been removed and thrown all over the place too. I have a 5-hour drive from my hometown to my job. I work 2 16-hour shifts, and then I have 4 days off. If I get tired, which I often did as I'd be leaving work at 11:30 p.m., I'd stop and leave a note on my window saying, "I'm just napping, I'm okay." I've had people pounding on my car window thinking I was overdosed or dead, and I'm just a very heavy sleeper. And because of that, I set my alarm for 20 minutes. One night after hitting a gas station in my first leg, I made such a stop, and I parked off to the side, put up my note, and reclined my seat. Next thing I know, I'm on a back country road, and there are some houses, but no traffic. I'm at a dead stop in the middle of this road. It's light out, so I grab my phone, and I see it's 6:30 a.m., and I barely have service. I open up maps and plug in my mom's address and followed the course. It thankfully had enough service to upload. I was 20 minutes away from a small town called Harpersville, and I got on the highway, and I think it was about another 20 miles from my initial starting point. So, between 1 a.m. and 6:30 a.m., I have no idea where I drove, if I was even driving that whole time, how I didn't hit anything or anyone, how no cops or even other drivers didn't see me. Maybe I was driving fine enough. I'll never know. The whole incident was beyond terrifying. I wish I'd thought to look at my location services to see exactly where I was that night. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you like this style of video, please be sure to hit the like button as it helps me out greatly. And also, if you'd like to see me again, I upload videos every Friday, and you can subscribe to be notified of when my videos when they come out. But with all that being said, have an awesome day. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's goodbye for now, but I hope to haunt you again soon.